When the Galactic Union first heard about a small blue planet called Earth, most of them laughed. To them, it looked like a primitive world full of weak, soft creatures who still used metal and fire to travel through space. The Union had seen thousands of such planets before, young, noisy civilizations that never lasted long. Their scouts were sure Earth would be the same, just another small world waiting to be ruled. The Union decided to send a team to make contact. They didn't come with peace or respect. They came to observe, to measure, and to prepare Earth for future control. In their minds, humans would be easy to handle, short-lived, emotional, and completely unaware of the power that existed beyond their skies. The Union had no idea how wrong they were. The first alien ship entered the solar system quietly, hiding behind the shadow of the moon. Its silver hull reflected the sunlight like a mirror, and inside, dozens of alien scientists watched their screens carefully. They saw the lights of human cities glowing across the planet. They listened to radio signals, internet noise, and television broadcasts. They laughed when they heard human music and saw people dancing. "Look at them," one alien said. "They fight each other and call it entertainment." Another replied, "They're barely civilized. They still burn fuel to move." Their commander nodded slowly. "Then it will be easy." The Union's leaders expected the humans to welcome them with open arms. They imagined a grand landing on a white field where humans would kneel and beg to join the Great Union. They believed humans would trade their freedom for protection. But humans were different. They didn't kneel easily, and they never gave up control without a fight. The first sign of trouble came as the alien ship entered Earth's orbit. Their scanners detected strange radar beams locking onto them from below. At first, the aliens ignored it, thinking it was just a weather system or primitive technology. Then a warning light blinked. Someone on the surface had locked missiles onto them. The aliens laughed again. "Missiles? They think those can reach us?" But a few seconds later, the first missile streaked through the sky and exploded only a few hundred meters from their hull. The ship shook violently. Alarms screamed, and the crew stared at each other in disbelief. "What just happened?" shouted the commander. "Impact from below. Their weapons. Somehow they reached orbit," one officer replied. The commander's hands trembled. "That's impossible. Their species isn't supposed to have this capability." But humans did. They weren't afraid of the unknown. They saw a strange object above their sky and did what humans always did. They confronted it. On the ground. The humans were panicking too, but not with fear. Every radar station, every military base, and every observatory was active. Scientists shouted coordinates, soldiers prepared weapons, and pilots rushed to their jets. No one knew what the strange object was, but everyone shared the same thought. If it's a threat, we'll fight it. That was the human way. The aliens tried to retreat, but their systems were being jammed. The humans had found a way to interfere with their signals using strong radio waves. It wasn't advanced technology. It was clever improvisation. That's what made humans so dangerous. They didn't always have the best tools, but they always found a way to make things work. Within minutes, a second missile hit the alien craft, tearing open a section of its hull. Panic spread through the crew. "Emergency jump! We need to leave orbit now," shouted one of the officers. The commander hesitated, staring at the screens that showed hundreds of glowing dots rising from Earth. They were more missiles. Humans were firing everything they had. "Do it," he ordered. The ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only smoke, debris, and a scar across the night sky. Down on Earth, people cheered when the unidentified object disappeared. They didn't know what it was. They only knew it was gone. Governments remained silent. Military leaders gave no details. But in secret, they all shared a single message. We were not alone, and we were ready. In the Galactic Union, the news spread fast. The report from the surviving crew was shocking. They described how a primitive species had detected, tracked, and attacked a stealth ship designed to be invisible. Many leaders refused to believe it. Impossible, they said. Humans cannot do that. But the damage report proved otherwise. The Union began to whisper. Maybe humans weren't what they seemed. Scientists started digging into old records. They found that humans had survived countless disasters. Wars, plagues, natural catastrophes. Every time they should have vanished, they came back stronger. A few alien historians began to call them the survivors. Still, most Union leaders dismissed the idea, saying it was luck or coincidence. But the commander who led that mission couldn't forget the look on his screens, the flash of those missiles, the speed of the human response. He wrote in his final report, "This species will not submit easily. They are born fighters." That single sentence spread through the Union's information network. Some laughed at it, some ignored it, but others felt a chill deep inside. If humans could fight a Union probe now, what would they do in 50 years? In 100? They didn't know it yet, but the galaxy had just witnessed the beginning of something that would change everything. The humans didn't know they had made first contact. They didn't know the galaxy was watching them, but they had already made their message clear. They were not prey, they were not servants, and they would not be conquered. The first contact wasn't peaceful. It was fire, steel, and defiance. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, alien races began to whisper a new name with both fear and respect: human. Weeks passed after the strange battle above Earth, and the Galactic Union was restless. The first contact mission had ended in humiliation, and no one in the Union could understand how a primitive species like humans had managed to destroy one of their most advanced probes. Some called it a fluke, others said the humans got lucky, but a few cautious minds wanted answers. The Union decided to send another ship, a silent observer this time, one that would not be seen or detected. Its mission was simple: watch the humans, study them, and find out what made them so dangerous. The new ship arrived at the edge of the solar system in complete silence. It had a dark hull that absorbed light, and it used stealth fields to hide from all detection. The alien crew inside were the best researchers in the galaxy, proud of their technology, confident in their secrecy. They believed this time nothing could go wrong. They began recording everything about Earth: the movements of its people, its energy use, its communication signals, its military patterns. At first, everything looked ordinary. Humans worked, laughed, fought, and built things. They were messy and emotional, always busy, always talking, and always doing 100 things at once. But the more the aliens watched, the more they began to feel something strange. One of the alien researchers stared at the human cities glowing at night. "So much light," she whispered. "They never rest." Another answered, "They burn their world just to stay awake." But there was admiration in his tone, not mockery. Every time humans faced a problem, they built something to solve it. When storms hit, they rebuilt stronger. When diseases came, they invented cures. When their world seemed to crumble, they stood back up. The aliens couldn't understand it. How could such fragile bodies hold so much strength? The ship hovered above the deserts, then over the frozen poles, then above great cities filled with life. Everywhere they looked, humans were moving, creating, surviving. They saw children playing in snow, laughing even in the cold. They saw old people planting trees whose shade they would never sit under. They saw scientists working through the night, trying to understand the universe. The aliens were amazed. Their own species rarely showed such persistence. They were advanced, yes, but comfortable. They didn't struggle anymore. They didn't need to. Humans, on the other hand, seemed to thrive in struggle. It was like their whole spirit was built around one idea: never give up. The alien commander of the observation ship wrote daily reports to the Union Council. He described the strange mix of chaos and brilliance that filled human life. He told them humans could argue one moment and save each other the next. He said their kindness was as powerful as their rage. He even sent recordings of humans laughing together after hard days. They feel deeply, he wrote, and because of that, they live fiercely. But the council dismissed his words. They only wanted proof that humans were not a threat. They didn't understand that what he was describing was the threat. The power of human will. One night, while the ship hovered above a storm over the Pacific Ocean, lightning struck the water below. The humans on ships nearby didn't retreat. They adjusted their sails and continued. The aliens watched from above, stunned. "Why don't they flee?" one asked. "Because they believe they can win," another replied softly. That moment stayed with them. Humans faced danger like it was a challenge, not a death sentence. It wasn't courage from ignorance. It was courage from experience. The aliens gathered samples secretly from human communication networks. They read stories, news, and messages. They found tales of love, war, sacrifice, and hope. They saw humans mourn their dead and still move forward. They saw people fight for others they had never met. To the aliens, this was madness. Why risk your life for someone else? But the more they watched, the more they realized it wasn't madness. It was humanity. A strange, beautiful kind of strength that came from caring about others. Days turned into weeks, and the alien crew began to change. They started to admire the very beings they were sent to study. They found themselves cheering when humans succeeded. When a human rocket launched into space, the aliens watched in silence. The ship was small, clumsy, and slow, but it carried humans who dreamed of touching the stars. "Do they know we're already here?" one alien whispered. The commander smiled faintly. "They don't need to know. They'll come anyway." But then something unexpected happened. While the ship was scanning a mountain range, one of the human observatories detected a strange reading. A group of scientists noticed a flicker in the night sky, a reflection that didn't match any known satellite. They began tracking it, sending coordinates to others around the planet. The alien crew panicked. "How can they see us? Our cloak is perfect." "Maybe it's not their machines," the commander said quietly. "Maybe it's their instinct." The humans were curious, too curious, and curiosity was their greatest weapon. To hide, the alien ship moved deeper into the clouds, but the humans kept following the anomaly. It was like a game of hide and seek between species, one using advanced stealth, the other using determination. Finally, the aliens had to leave orbit again, afraid of being discovered. Before they left, the commander looked down at the glowing planet one last time. He whispered to himself, "They are not what we thought." He sent one last report to the Union Council, his voice calm but serious. "You think they are weak because you see only their weapons, but their true strength is not in their machines, it's in their hearts." The Council ignored him once more, but his words were recorded. One day, they would remember them. As the observation ship disappeared into the dark of space, the humans below continued to live. They didn't know they were being watched, but somehow they acted like they did. They kept building, dreaming, and reaching higher. The galaxy still laughed at them, but the first seeds of fear had already been planted. Because those who watched had seen the truth, humans were unpredictable, and nothing in the universe was more dangerous than a being who refused to give up. Far from Earth, the alien commander sat quietly in his ship's quarters, watching recordings of humans smiling. He no longer felt superior, he felt respect. He had seen something the rest of the galaxy hadn't yet realized. The humans were not just surviving, they were preparing. And when they finally reached the stars, the galaxy would never be the same again, because the species everyone thought was weak was already legendary in spirit, long before they ever left their home. They just hadn't been recognized yet, but soon they would be. And the stars would remember the day they first noticed the humans, the small, fierce creatures from the blue world who dared to challenge the universe itself. It was late evening in Nevada when the sky cracked open with a flash of light. At first, everyone thought it was a meteor, a piece of space rock burning up in the atmosphere. But it didn't burn. It slowed down, glowing like molten silver as it cut across the dark sky. Radars screamed, military bases went on alert, and within seconds, jets were launched to follow it. No one knew yet that it wasn't a rock. It was the same alien race that had once been shot at months before. This time, they hadn't come to fight, but fate had different plans. The alien observation ship had been quietly studying Earth again, watching cities and oceans from far above. Everything was normal until one of their engines malfunctioned. A small spark, a line of code that failed, and suddenly their stealth field flickered. For a few seconds, the ship became visible to the naked eye, shining brightly like a falling star. That moment changed history. Because humans saw it, tracked it, and reacted the way only humans could, with courage and action. Inside the alien ship, alarms were blaring. "We've lost control of stabilizers," shouted one officer. "Gravity pull increasing. We're descending." Another replied. The commander ordered emergency protocols, but it was too late. The ship was falling toward Earth fast, and it was heading straight for a desert in Nevada. They tried to power the engines again, but the damage was done. With a final jolt, the ship crashed into the sand, carving a deep trail of smoke and metal. Within minutes, the crash site was surrounded by human military forces. Helicopters circled above, tanks rolled in, and bright spotlights lit up the strange metallic wreck. The aliens inside panicked, unsure if they should fight or surrender. But their commander stopped them. "No weapons," he said. "Observe how they respond." The main hatch opened slowly, and for the first time in history, humans and aliens stood face to face. The soldiers aimed their guns immediately, their hearts racing. The creatures before them were tall, silver-skinned, and had dark, glowing eyes. They didn't speak, but they raised their hands, showing they weren't here to fight. For a long moment, no one moved. Then a single human officer stepped forward, lowering his weapon. "Don't shoot," he said quietly. "They're not attacking." It was a small decision, but it changed everything. The aliens were escorted carefully to a nearby military base. Scientists rushed to study them, and doctors checked their injuries. But what surprised the aliens most was how humans treated them. Not with hate, not with cruelty, but with curiosity and even kindness. The humans gave them food, water, and warm blankets. They didn't torture or threaten. They asked questions. Simple ones. Where are you from? Do you understand us? Why are you here? The aliens couldn't answer at first, but they were shocked by the compassion they were shown. One of the younger aliens whispered to his commander, "They are dangerous, yes, but they are gentle." The commander nodded slowly. That's what makes them dangerous. He could see the power behind human eyes, not just the power to destroy, but the power to forgive. The humans wanted to learn, to understand, even after being attacked months earlier. It was not weakness, it was something the aliens had never seen before. Empathy mixed with strength. Over the next few days, communication began. The humans brought linguists, scientists, and even artists to try and find a way to talk. They showed the aliens pictures, maps, and symbols. One scientist even drew a human and an alien shaking hands. The commander watched silently, impressed by their efforts. "They want peace," he said, "but peace with strength, not surrender." Meanwhile, in secret, other governments around the world were watching. Satellites picked up the crash, and whispers spread quickly. "Aliens have landed," some said, "and they are talking to the Americans." Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Are they friends or enemies? But the humans on the ground were already making that choice. They chose not to fear, but to connect. The alien commander studied the humans up close. He saw how they argued, joked, and worked together. He saw fear in their eyes, yes, but he also saw bravery. When a human soldier offered him water, the commander hesitated. The soldier smiled and said, "It's okay, it's clean." That small act stayed in the commander's mind longer than any battle ever could. One night, while the camp slept, the alien commander stood outside, looking at the stars. A young human guard approached him quietly. "Can you understand me?" the guard asked. The alien didn't answer, but he nodded slightly. The guard smiled and pointed up. "That's where you came from, right?" The alien looked up too, his expression unreadable. Then, to the guard's surprise, he said softly in broken English, "We come to see who you are." The guard blinked in shock. "And what did you find?" The alien paused. His voice was almost a whisper. "Strong, kind, dangerous." By morning, the alien ship had been repaired enough to leave. The humans helped them carry materials, provided tools, and stood back as the ship powered up. Before leaving, the alien commander turned to the base's general. He placed his hand over his chest, a gesture of respect in his culture. The general did the same. No words were needed. In that silent exchange, two very different worlds understood each other for the first time. When the ship rose into the sky, the soldiers on the ground watched in awe. None of them fired, none of them ran. They simply watched history fly away into the stars. The aliens, from their windows, looked down at the humans growing smaller beneath them. "They did not destroy us," one of them said softly. "They helped us." The commander nodded. "Now I understand." He looked out at the blue planet below, his eyes filled with wonder. They fight when attacked. They show mercy when they can. They are not weak. They are not savage. They are balanced. When the alien ship finally returned to the Union, their report shocked everyone. The commander's message was clear. Humans are unlike any species we have ever met. They are dangerous, not because they seek war, but because they seek peace. If you threaten them, they fight. If you offer peace, they return it. And that combination makes them unstoppable. The council didn't know how to respond, but one thing was certain. Humanity had earned the galaxy's attention. They were no longer the unknown species from a small blue planet. They were now the mystery that would one day change the stars forever. And somewhere on Earth, as humans looked up at the sky, they had no idea that they had just made the most important first contact in history. A contact that didn't end in war, but in understanding. And that was far more terrifying to the galaxy than any weapon could ever be. News of the strange meeting on Earth spread across the Galactic Union like wildfire. Every species had something to say, and almost none of it was kind. The story of how a primitive race called humans had shot down a Union ship and then helped another one return home was hard to believe. To most of the galaxy, it sounded ridiculous, a joke. They laughed at the idea that a small, unevolved species could fight one of their ships and survive. They laughed even harder when they heard the aliens who visited Earth had returned unharmed and even impressed. In the great halls of the Union Senate, the laughter echoed for days. Leaders of powerful civilizations sat in tall, glowing chambers, surrounded by light and technology beyond human imagination. Screens floated in the air showing the reports from Earth. One senator from the Rye species waved his claws dismissively. So these humans shot at us and offered tea after? Typical primitive behavior. Another, a tall and thin being from the Varellon Empire, said, "They're emotional animals, nothing more." The others nodded, amused, their pride blinding them to the truth. But in one dark corner of the Senate sat a quiet figure, an old admiral from the Valdari fleet, known for his cold logic and experience in war. He didn't laugh. He studied the reports closely. The damage to the first probe, the human response time, the communication from the second contact. He saw something in the numbers that the others ignored. He raised his hand slowly, his voice deep and calm. "You can laugh if you wish," he said, "but these humans are not like the others we've found before." The laughter died down for a moment, and the senators turned to look at him. "Explain yourself, old one of them said mockingly. The admiral leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "They are unpredictable. They are emotional, and they adapt faster than any species I have ever studied." He pointed at the data displayed in front of them. "Look here. When our ship entered their orbit, they reacted in minutes, not hours. When they were faced with something they didn't understand, they didn't freeze, they fought back." He tapped the screen again. "And when the next group of us fell to the ground, they didn't destroy them, they helped them. Do you not see it? They learn from every encounter. They change behavior faster than we can calculate." The chamber grew quiet. No one wanted to admit it, but his words had weight. Still, pride filled the room. A senator from the powerful Dravkin Empire leaned forward, his scales shining under the chamber lights. "You're saying they're dangerous?" "They're insects, Admiral," he hissed. The Admiral looked him straight in the eye. "Then you should be careful which insects you step on." The Dravkin sneered, "Are you afraid of them?" The Admiral answered simply, "No, but I respect them." His words were recorded that day, but few paid attention. Most left the meeting amused, confident in their superiority. They had conquered worlds with far greater power than Earth. To them, humanity was nothing, a small, noisy species trapped on one planet. They didn't see that the humans were already preparing to reach further. They didn't understand that curiosity and unity were stronger than any fleet or weapon. Back on Earth, things were changing quickly. Governments still kept the alien contact a secret from the public. But behind closed doors, research teams worked day and night, studying the remains of alien technology left behind. Scientists tried to decode what they could, learning faster than anyone expected. Humans didn't know it yet. But they were already growing beyond what the Union believed possible. Meanwhile, in the stars, the old Valdari admiral continued his research. He watched every human signal that reached space, every radio broadcast, every image, every sound. He saw their wars, their art, their laughter, and their grief. He began to understand what made them different. He wrote in his report, "They are a contradiction. They are capable of great destruction, yet they create beauty in the ruins. They love deeply, fight fiercely, and always find a way to rise again." But the rest of the galaxy didn't want to hear it. They preferred the lie, that humans were weak, chaotic, and unimportant. The Union laughed at the old admiral's warnings. One senator even joked, "If they're so strong, let them prove it." Those words would come back to haunt them. Months later, the Dravkin Empire decided to prove the admiral wrong. They wanted to humiliate the humans, to show the galaxy how powerless they really were. They planned to send a small fleet to one of Earth's colonies on Mars. It wasn't an invasion, at least not officially. They called it an inspection mission, but their real goal was to scare humanity into submission. They thought it would be easy. After all, how could a young race stand against a star-faring empire with centuries of military dominance? When the admiral heard about the plan, he tried to stop it. He warned them again, do not test them, not yet. But they ignored him. The Dravkin wanted glory, and glory blinded them. They launched their ships toward the Red Planet with full confidence, expecting no resistance. They believed humans would beg for mercy. They couldn't imagine what was waiting for them. As the Dravkin ships approached Mars, human satellites detected them almost immediately. Alarms went off across the colony, and within hours, human command centers on Earth and Luna came alive. The Dravkin were still laughing, sending open messages to the humans. Do not resist. We come only to inspect your colony, they said. But humans didn't respond with words. They responded with silence and action. Their ships rose from the Martian surface, red dust swirling behind them like fire. They were not sleek or elegant, but they were strong, armored, and ready. The Dravkin expected to see fear, but instead they saw precision. In less than 24 hours, their entire fleet disappeared from Mars' orbit. No one in the galaxy knew exactly what happened. But when a few damaged Dravkin ships limped back home, the message was clear. Humans were not to be underestimated. Back in the Senate, the laughter was gone. The same senators who mocked Earth now sat in silence as the reports came in. The old admiral said nothing. He only watched them with cold eyes. He had warned them, but they hadn't listened. Now they knew the truth. The humans were not weak, not foolish, and definitely not afraid. They were something far more dangerous. Determined, intelligent, and unstoppable when provoked. And though the Union tried to hide the story, the galaxy had already begun to whisper. The name of humanity was spreading from star to star. They were no longer the joke of the cosmos. They were becoming a mystery, a warning, and soon, a legend. The day the laughter stopped was the day the galaxy began to fear the humans, and it was only the beginning of what was yet to come. After the Dravkin defeat on Mars, everything changed in the galaxy. The laughter that once filled the Union halls had vanished, replaced by silence and nervous whispers. No one could believe that a so-called primitive species had pushed back one of the most feared empires in the galaxy. The Dravkin were humiliated, their once proud fleets licking their wounds. But the humans, they didn't celebrate. They didn't boast. They simply went back to work, improving, learning, and building. That was what scared everyone the most. Humans didn't seem to act like conquerors or victims. They acted like survivors, always moving forward. In the weeks after the battle, the Galactic Union sent several observation drones to orbit Earth and Mars. They wanted to study human behavior from a distance. They were careful not to interfere this time, afraid of another incident. What they saw both fascinated and terrified them. Humans were working together in a way most species never could. Different nations that once fought now shared technology and resources. Military and scientific minds cooperated to create new defenses. It was as if the threat from space had united all of humanity overnight. Inside secret underground bases, scientists examined alien wreckage from the Dravkin ships. They reverse-engineered engines, shields, and weapons. Within months, Earth had created the first prototype of their own starship powered by alien energy. It wasn't as advanced as Union ships, but it was fast, strong, and completely human-made. They named it Horizon 1, a symbol of hope and a message to the stars. The day it launched, people all over Earth watched as it rose beyond the clouds. For the first time in history, humans were truly stepping into the galaxy, not as explorers under someone else's shadow, but as equals. The Galactic Union could no longer ignore them. Meetings were held. Endless debates filled the halls. Some leaders said humanity should be invited to join the Union. Others argued they were too dangerous, too unpredictable. The Valdari admiral, the same one who had once warned the Senate, spoke again. I told you they would rise faster than you think, he said quietly, and now they are ready. But still, many refused to listen. Fear clouded their judgment, and pride kept them from reaching out peacefully. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening among ordinary people across the galaxy. In markets, schools, and forums, aliens whispered stories about the humans. Some called them the Fireborn, others called them the Children of War. To many oppressed races, humans became a symbol of hope. If a species that came from a small blue planet could stand against empires, maybe others could too. That hope spread faster than the Union could control. On Earth, humanity didn't know about these whispers. They were too busy preparing for what they knew would come next. The Dravkin would never forgive the humiliation on Mars. They would regroup, rebuild, and strike again. But this time, humans would be ready. The newly formed Earth Defense Command trained soldiers, pilots, and scientists. They created new space stations, orbital cannons, and stealth ships. Every nation contributed, setting aside their differences for survival. The spirit of unity that had once been a dream was now real, forged by fear and determination. The Valdari admiral watched all this from afar. He knew a storm was coming, one that would change the galaxy forever. He tried once again to convince the Senate to form an alliance with humanity. We can either face them as friends, he said, or fall before them as enemies. But his warnings went unheeded. The younger senators laughed nervously, pretending not to be afraid. Deep down, though, they all knew the truth. Humanity was no longer weak. Then came the moment that shocked everyone. One day, without warning, a human transmission appeared on every major Union channel. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a demand. It was a message. The image of a human woman appeared on the screen, wearing a dark uniform with the insignia of the Earth Defense Command. Her voice was calm and firm. To the civilizations of the stars, she said, we come not in conquest, but in curiosity. We wish for peace, but we will not kneel. Her eyes burned with determination, and though her words were simple, they carried a weight no one could ignore. Across the galaxy, billions watched in silence. Some were inspired, others were terrified. To the powerful empires, it was a declaration of independence. To the weak and oppressed, it was a promise. For the first time in galactic history, a young species had spoken to the galaxy as an equal, not a subject. The Dravkin, of course, took it as an insult. Their leaders roared in fury, calling humans arrogant and foolish. They declared war not just to reclaim their pride, but to crush humanity before it grew stronger. But they underestimated just how much humans had changed. The new fleets built by Earth and its allies were ready. The ships gleamed silver and black, forged from both human and alien technology. They weren't the biggest or most beautiful, but they were fast, deadly, and commanded by minds that refused to break. When the Dravkin fleets entered the solar system again, they expected an easy victory. Instead, they were met with resistance unlike anything they had seen before. Human ships didn't retreat. They attacked with strategy, courage, and creativity. They used asteroids as shields, hacked enemy systems mid-battle, and even tricked enemy fleets into colliding. The Dravkin commanders couldn't understand it. Humans didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like survivors who had nothing to lose. And that made them unstoppable. The battle lasted for days, and when it finally ended, the stars above Earth burned with debris. Once again, humanity stood victorious. This time, the galaxy didn't laugh. They watched in stunned silence as human ships floated above their homeworld, glowing against the void. The message was clear. Humans were no longer the newcomers. They had arrived, and they weren't going anywhere. In the aftermath, something incredible happened. Smaller alien civilizations began reaching out to Earth in secret. They wanted alliances, trade, even friendship. They saw in humanity a spark of hope and a chance for freedom. And as humans began to explore beyond their solar system, more and more species welcomed them. They weren't just feared, they were admired. Back in the Senate, the Valdari admiral smiled bitterly as he watched reports of the human victory. He whispered to himself, "Legendary! I warned them." And somewhere out in the stars, a new era began. The age of humanity, the age of fire and courage. The galaxy would never be the same again. And every world that looked up at the night sky knew one thing for certain. The humans were here to stay, and their legend had only just begun. The war between the humans and the Dravkin Empire changed everything. The galaxy that once looked down on Earth now looked up in fear and respect. The humans had done what no one believed possible. They had fought back against a galactic power and won. But victory came with a price. Many brave men and women had lost their lives. Cities had been damaged, and Mars still carried the scars of war. Yet the spirit of humanity only grew stronger. Instead of collapsing, They rebuilt faster than anyone thought they could. That was something the rest of the galaxy could never understand. Every time humans were pushed down, they rose higher. In the months that followed, Earth became a center of attention. Alien envoys began visiting secretly, afraid to be seen by the Union. Some wanted alliances, others wanted protection. A few even came just to meet the beings who had defeated the Dravkin. They expected to find cruel conquerors or cold strategists, but what they found were ordinary people: scientists, builders, children, families. Humans didn't see themselves as heroes or monsters. They simply did what they had to do to survive. That was what made them special. The Valdari admiral, who had once warned the Union, came to Earth himself. He was old, with silver scales and tired eyes. When he arrived, he was met by the human commander who had led the defense during the war. They stood together in silence at the edge of a crater on Mars. The admiral looked around and said quietly, "You've built something incredible here." The human commander nodded. "We had no choice." The admiral smiled faintly. "That's what makes you dangerous." He wasn't wrong. Humans were dangerous, not because they wanted war, but because they never gave up once they decided to live. The admiral met with Earth's leaders, and for the first time, someone from the Galactic Union spoke to humanity with respect. He told them stories of the Union, of the thousands of worlds that existed beyond their stars. He warned them of what was coming. "Your victory against the Dravkin will not go unpunished," he said. "The Union fears what it does not control, and right now, they fear you." The human leaders listened carefully. They had already guessed it. The Union would never allow a free and unpredictable species to rise unchecked, so humanity prepared again. But this time, they didn't prepare for war. They prepared for diplomacy. They wanted to show the galaxy that they could be allies, not threats. They began to send out missions of peace, exploring nearby systems and offering aid to smaller civilizations. The Horizon 1 and its sister ships became symbols of hope wherever they went. They helped rebuild destroyed colonies, shared medical knowledge, and even saved alien lives during disasters. Everywhere they went, the legend of humans grew, but not everyone welcomed them. In the shadow of the Union, powerful empires whispered plans. They called humans the Rising Fire, and some wanted to extinguish it before it spread. Secret fleets began to move in the dark, and spies tried to steal human technology. The humans, however, were already expecting this. They had learned to adapt quickly, to see threats before they struck. They turned every challenge into a lesson, every mistake into a strategy. One day, a Union delegation finally arrived on Earth. It was the first official meeting between humanity and the Galactic Union. The ship that descended into Earth's orbit was massive, covered in glowing panels and guarded by war drones. Many people watched from the ground, anxious but proud. When the doors opened, tall and elegant alien diplomats stepped out, their eyes cold and cautious. They were met by human representatives dressed in simple uniforms, standing under their planet's blue sky. There were no golden thrones or banners, only respect and calm confidence. The lead alien spoke first. "We come to offer peace, but peace has conditions." The human leader raised an eyebrow. "Peace does not come with chains." The alien looked surprised. Few had ever spoken to them like that. And the talks lasted for days. The Union wanted control over human expansion, to limit their technology, to make Earth part of their system. But humans refused. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They simply said no, again and again. The Valdari admiral, now serving as an unofficial bridge between the two sides, watched closely. He could see both the arrogance of the Union and the quiet strength of the humans. He knew which side history would favor. During one meeting, a Union delegate tried to intimidate the humans. He slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "You are nothing without our knowledge." The human leader calmly stood, his expression steady. "Then why are you here?" he asked. The room went silent. The alien's face changed from anger to embarrassment. Everyone realized what that question truly meant. The Union needed humans now more than humans needed them. Eventually, the delegation left, frustrated and defeated. They didn't get what they wanted, and the galaxy soon heard about it. The news spread quickly. Humans had stood their ground against the Union and walked away free. To many alien civilizations, it was the most shocking event in recent history. To others, it was inspiring. For the first time, someone had refused to bow to the Union's power. After the meeting, Earth entered a new age. Alliances formed with smaller alien nations. Trade began between species that had never spoken before. Human engineers worked side by side with alien scientists, creating technology that combined the best of both worlds. They built faster ships, stronger shields, and smarter AIs. But what really set humans apart wasn't their machines, it was their hearts. They treated other species as equals, not inferiors. They saw friends where others saw tools, and that made all the difference. Soon, whispers turned into songs and stories told across the stars. Tales of humans who fought with fire but healed with kindness. Aliens told their children about the species from the blue planet, the ones who defied empires, protected strangers, and never stopped believing in themselves. To some, humans were a threat, but to many others, they were hope. And hope is far more dangerous than any weapon. Back in the Union Senate, fear began to grow. Some leaders warned that if humanity kept spreading their influence, the balance of power would collapse. But others argued it was too late. The humans were already part of the galaxy now, and no one could erase them. The Valdari admiral, sitting quietly in the corner, smiled as he listened to their arguments. He remembered his first words years ago, when everyone laughed at him. "They are unpredictable, emotional, and faster than we can calculate," he had said. And now, every senator in the hall knew he was right. As Earth's ships sailed deeper into the stars, one thing became clear to everyone who crossed their path. The humans were no longer the frightened newcomers. They were explorers, warriors, healers, and dreamers all at once. They didn't conquer the galaxy with weapons. They conquered it with will. And every star that saw their ships pass by carried the same thought. The humans were not weak. They were legendary. And their story was still being written. Years passed after the first great wars and the tense meetings between humans and the Galactic Union. By now, humanity was no longer an unknown name whispered in the corners of alien taverns. They had become something much larger, a force that every species in the galaxy had to acknowledge. Wherever human ships traveled, stories followed them. Some called them heroes, others called them troublemakers. But everyone agreed on one thing: humans changed everything. Their colonies had spread across dozens of worlds now. Some were built on barren rocks where no life had existed before. Others thrived under alien suns, side by side with species who once feared them. Humans didn't just conquer. They adapted, learned, and made homes where no one else dared to settle. They built schools, hospitals, trade routes, and alliances that connected different species together for the first time in history. It wasn't power through fear, it was power through connection. But peace never lasts forever. Far beyond the known borders of the Union, something ancient stirred. It was older than the Union itself, a forgotten species once believed extinct. They called themselves the Krill, a hive-minded race that consumed entire planets. For centuries, they had been quiet, hidden deep within a dying galaxy. But now, they had returned, stronger and hungrier than ever. The first warning came from an outpost near the edge of human space. A single message: "They're coming," and then silence. When the humans received the message, they didn't panic. They didn't argue or wait for someone else to act. They moved, fast and united. The Earth Defense Command immediately called for all allied worlds to prepare. Old enemies, new friends, and distant traitors all answered the call. Even the Valdari admiral, now retired, offered his experience. He said, "This is the moment we were all waiting for. The humans will either save the galaxy or burn with it." The Krill invasion began like a storm. Their ships weren't ships at all. They were living creatures made of bone and black armor. They didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They simply arrived, devoured, and moved on. When the first wave reached the borders of the Union, entire planets fell in hours. The proud empires that once mocked humanity now begged for help. And humanity did not hesitate. They could have turned away. They could have watched the galaxy crumble. But that wasn't who they were. Human fleets launched from every world, forming a defense line across hundreds of light years. They weren't fighting for territory now. They were fighting for existence. Side by side with alien allies, humans held the line. For every ship the Krill destroyed, 2 more took its place. Battles burned through the stars. Entire systems glowing red with the heat of war. It was chaos, but in that chaos, humans thrived. They didn't follow the same strict rules as other races. They improvised, took risks, and fought with passion. That passion became the difference between survival and extinction. One battle stood out above all others, the Battle of Orion's Rift. It was where the Krill sent their largest swarm to crush the resistance once and for all. Billions of life forms filled the void, their hive ships covering entire regions of space. When the humans arrived, they were outnumbered 10 to 1. Every logical commander would have retreated, but humans didn't always follow logic. The human fleet commander, Admiral Reyes, sent one short message to every ship: hold the line, not one world more. And then they charged. The fight lasted 3 days and nights, if time could even be counted in space. Ships exploded like stars, debris floated through the dark. But humans refused to fall. They fought until their ammunition ran dry, then rammed their ships into enemy hives. They hacked the Krill's biosystems, injected viruses, and even used gravity itself as a weapon. No species had ever fought like this before. It was madness, and it worked. When the dust settled, Orion's Rift was silent. The Krill swarm was broken, scattered into fragments. And though humanity had lost thousands, the galaxy was saved. When the news spread, no one could stay silent. Planets that once called humans savages now built monuments in their honor. Songs were written, stories were told, and children of every race grew up dreaming of being like them. The legend of humanity had become something bigger than war. They were now seen as the protectors of life, the beings who stood between darkness and the rest of the stars. But back on Earth, there was no celebration. The survivors returned to rebuild, bury their dead, and prepare for whatever might come next. They didn't fight for glory. They fought because it was the right thing to do, and that made their victory shine even brighter. In the Galactic Union, leaders who once despised humanity now bowed in respect. The Valdari Admiral, frail and old, watched the human fleet return through his holographic screen. He whispered to himself, "You have done it again, humans. You've turned death into legend." In time, humans helped form a new alliance, not the old Union, but something better. A council of equals made up of dozens of races who now trusted one another. They named it the Concord of Stars. And the first elected leader of the Concord was human. She stood before representatives of every world and said, "We are not rulers. We are guardians. Together we will build something worth protecting." Her voice echoed across the galaxy, and for the first time in millennia, there was peace. The Krill threat faded into the dark. The stars grew quiet again, but no one forgot what had happened, and no one forgot who had stood at the front when the galaxy burned. From then on, whenever children looked up at the night sky, their parents would tell them, those stars were saved by the humans. And on countless worlds, monuments rose, carved with the same words in 1,000 languages. They came from a small blue world, fragile yet fearless. They fought when others fled. They stood when others fell, and they lit the darkness with fire. In the end, the galaxy finally understood the truth. Humans were never the weak ones. They were the spark in the void, the flame that refused to die. They were not just survivors, they were legends. And their story, though it had changed the galaxy forever, was far from over. Because humans, no matter where they went, always looked to the next horizon, always searching, always daring, always ready. And as their ships vanished into the endless dark once more, the stars themselves seemed to whisper the truth the galaxy had finally learned. Humans weren't weak. They were legendary. Years after the Great Krill War, the galaxy entered an age of peace and rebuilding. For the first time in living memory, there were no battles, no invasions, no cries of fear echoing across the stars. Worlds that had once burned now grew green again. Cities rose from ashes, and trade routes opened between civilizations that had once been enemies. The Concord of Stars, founded by humans and their allies, became the symbol of unity across the galaxy. Under its banner, thousands of species worked together, not out of fear, but out of trust. And at the center of it all stood humanity. The species that had once been ignored, mocked, and underestimated was now seen as the heart of the galaxy. But humans never claimed to rule. They didn't demand tribute. They didn't build empires. Instead, they shared knowledge, technology, and compassion. They helped rebuild alien worlds, sent food and medicine to the farthest colonies, and offered shelter to those who had lost everything. Everywhere they went, they brought hope. The same fiery determination that had carried them through wars now built bridges instead of walls. And because of that, they were loved and feared even more deeply, because every being in the galaxy knew one truth: the humans didn't stop ever. Among the stars, stories of their courage had become myths. On the frozen world of Lurien, children carved wooden figures of human warriors and called them the protectors of light. On the jungle moon of Xeris, tribes sang songs about the fire-eyed ones who fought the darkness and saved the skies. Even in the farthest, most hostile corners of space, the name human meant something sacred. It meant strength, and it meant hope. But while the galaxy celebrated peace, humanity continued to move forward. New generations were born who had never known the fear of invasion. For them, space wasn't a battlefield, it was a home. The children of the new age grew up studying alien cultures, speaking multiple languages, and dreaming of the stars. Humans built academies where species from across the Concord could learn together. Engineers from Earth worked beside scientists from Valdari and healers from Dravkin. Old grudges faded into memory, replaced by something new: understanding. On Earth, life had changed too. The planet that once feared destruction had become the jewel of the galaxy. It wasn't just a homeworld anymore. It was a symbol. Aliens from distant systems came to visit, to walk under the same blue sky that had birthed the species who changed everything. The people of Earth welcomed them warmly, with open arms and open hearts. They showed them their oceans, their forests, their art, and their music. Many aliens said it was strange. How humans could carry so much pain in their history, and yet still sing songs full of hope. That, they said, was what made humans different. One day, the leaders of the Concord gathered on Earth for a historic meeting. Representatives from every major civilization arrived to sign a new charter, one that would ensure peace and cooperation for centuries to come. The ceremony was held in the rebuilt city of Geneva, surrounded by green parks and glowing towers of glass and steel. The human chancellor stood before them all, her hair silver, her voice steady but warm. She said, "Long ago, we were afraid of the stars. We thought the universe was too big, too cruel. But then we learned something: that courage is not born from power, but from love. And we loved our home, our people, and our future enough to fight for them." The hall was silent, every eye fixed on her. She continued, "Now it's time we love the galaxy the same way." When she finished speaking, the entire chamber erupted in applause. Even the oldest and proudest alien leaders bowed their heads in respect. The charter was signed, and with it, the galaxy entered what would later be called the Age of Light. It was a time of discovery, creation, and unity. New worlds were found, new friendships were formed, and old fears faded into stories told only to remind people of what had once been. But not everyone could rest. Even in peace, there were those who felt the pull of adventure. Among them were the new generation of human explorers. They weren't soldiers like their ancestors. They were dreamers, scientists, and wanderers. They built ships faster and stronger than any before, designed not for war, but for exploration. Their mission was simple: to go beyond the known stars, to see what lay past the edge of the galaxy, because that's what humans had always done. They kept moving forward. Before one of the new expeditions launched, an old Valdari admiral visited the docks. He was ancient now, his scales dull, his eyes dim, but when he looked at the humans preparing their ship, he smiled. He had lived long enough to see everything he once predicted come true. He walked up to the young captain and said, "When I was young, your kind were a myth. They said you were reckless, unstable, emotional. They were right, and that's what saved us all." The young captain grinned. "We just do what feels right." The admiral laughed softly. "And that is why the stars will always follow you." As the ship prepared to leave, thousands gathered to watch. Humans and aliens stood side by side, waving, cheering, crying. When the engines roared to life, a bright light filled the sky. The ship rose higher and higher until it vanished into the stars. And at that moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Another chapter of humanity's story had begun. Far beyond the reach of any known star, that ship would one day discover something that would change everything again. A signal, ancient, powerful, and familiar. It wasn't from the Krill, nor from the Union. It was older than any of them. A voice that whispered through the void, "Welcome, children of fire." No one knew what it meant, but every human aboard the ship smiled. Because no matter what waited ahead, they knew they would face it the same way they always had, together. Back on Earth, the night sky shimmered with countless stars, each one a reminder of the journey they had taken. From a small blue planet to the heart of the galaxy, from fear to legend, and though centuries would pass, one truth would never change. Wherever there was darkness, there would always be a human light. And every being who looked up at the stars would remember the name of the species who refused to bow. They would remember the fire that could not be extinguished. They would remember the humans, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as the ones who made the galaxy believe again, because humans weren't weak, and they never had been. They were legendary, and the legend would never end.